Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hooked on Hoops, brought to you by Nothing But Net Magazine and Baller TV. I tell you what, we're here at the Pangos All-America Camp. We're going to wrap it up today. The weekend was a great weekend for you, Dinos, and I think you got to be happy with the way the kids played and the depth of the kids.
Yes, I think we had very, very good depth this year. It wasn't the typical top-heavy like some years, but the overall depth and the diversity within grades was actually very high quality.
You know, Frank, one of the things that we talked about getting into this, and of course, I'll let everybody know, on my right is Dinos Trigonis. He's the executive director of the Pangos Camp and also the publisher of Nothing But Net. And on my left is a basketball writers Hall of Famer and a charter member of the McDonald's All-America Committee, Frank Burlison.
1977.
That's when I started in the business, was 1977. You beat me by a year or two, Frank. But bottom line is this. I thought it was very, very good. I thought the guard play was exceptional at this camp.
Yeah, I think the guard play, and again, alluding to going back to what Dino said about the depth, I mean, nothing illustrated it more, I thought, than when we were putting the All-Star along with Ronnie Flores, us three, and Ronnie. And we're looking at there were, and it played out in the top 60 games. There were 7, 8, 9 guys in the top 60 game, which was the first All-Star game played, that in most years would be locked top 15, top 20. I'm going to go this far to say I wouldn't be surprised at some point somebody who was in that in theory second All-Star game, the top 60 game, ends up being a McDonald's All-American. You look at it, Wesley Yates being a prime example, a kid who we went back and forth, unfortunately, and had 26 points. 6 threes and
24 points.
Yeah,
9 for 15 from the field, 6 for 10.
Yeah, kid from Beaumont, Texas, tremendous. But again, there were 7, 8 guys in that second team that were
also Brandon Williams too.
Yeah, I mean, there was guys in that second team. Let's go one step further. There were guys who didn't make any All-Star game who are going to get multiple scholarship offers and someday might be pros.
I talked to 3 or 4 parents after we got through the announcing the teams and stuff like that, and I told them, I said, look, your son is a mid-Division I plus basketball player. Put the chip on your shoulder, go out and keep working at it, because down the road, you're going to catch and pass some of those guys. And that's the one thing about it. And then we made that, I think, a theme this weekend, starting with Kenny Smith on night number 1, where he said, you got to learn to listen, you got to pick up those golden nuggets, and then you got to develop them into really gold pieces of jewelry. And that is the game that they want to develop. And I think that's one of the things about a camp like this. You get to learn yourself more than anything else. And it's not necessarily that you always have the best weekend or that you make the All-Star team. I mean, let's face it, some great players over the years. Some of the guys on your Legends wall didn't make the first team when it came to the All-Stars here. Of course, the most famous of that group is Russell Westbrook, who was a second teamer and barely got into camp.
Another great example, Van, is Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons was probably at the later pick of the first game. He ended up being a number 1 pick of the overall NBA draft as well.
And remember, when he showed up in Long Beach, how long had he even been in the U.S.? A couple of weeks, a month?
No, 2 days.
Yeah, and here's a kid who was a rising 9th grader and went in and, again, at 6'5" and lanky, wore braces, was wearing braces, and skinny, and you thought, look at that skill level. And again, you never know what a guy's going to be. Well, he's going to be the number 1 pick, but, this is going to be a heck of a player, and lo and behold,
I think that's one of the things when you run camps, and of course I've got 20-some years of experience, and we were an educational camp. We were teaching camp first, competition and evaluation second, and seeing the kids and the way they develop. The best thing that I say, because one of the things I love about the Pangos camps, and people always ask, well, why are you always at Pangos? And I said, well, because Pangos has great talent, but many times it's raw talent. It's talent of the future. It's not there now. And I think we saw a lot of that this week. In that second game, there were 7 or 8 kids who are going to challenge the guys in the top 30 game down the road as far as the quality of their play and who they're going to be. And I think that's the real thing I saw this weekend. And, we had some great players. We talked about some of them in episode number 1 about, Xavier Booker and Isaiah Elohim and Ian Jackson, and they didn't disappoint us throughout most of the weekend. I thought they were consistent players in every game they played, Frank.
Well, thinking of getting back to just the whole, again, Dinos doesn't need his back padded here, but when you look at the fact that, Van and myself and Dinos, we pride ourselves on having a pretty good idea who the top 95% of the players are during the regular season in terms of all classes. And, but again, Dino said, hey, this kid's supposed to be pretty good. We were going over the list last week, and there's 6 or 7 guys I had never heard of. I assume we're getting. So there were guys in this camp who all I knew was a name, and you watch them at the camp, and you go, holy smokes. And again, this is an opportunity. Again, there's heartbroken parents, heartbroken kids that they didn't make top 30 or top 60. But again, Jimmy Oladakin was he was so thankful that he just gets the opportunity to go to this camp because he knows that, now there's people from websites or people across the country who didn't know him before this camp, and they get to see him.
That's right.
And he played himself in the 60 game.
Yeah.
And also Zaire Beverly, another great example. He was probably unknown. We knew him, but outside of the LA area, 90% of those national guys had no idea he existed.
Yeah.
And now he's on the radar, even though he didn't make the All-Star.
Well, it's just like, take it from my old home state, Drew Kingery. Drew Kingery, I knew about Drew. I knew he was one of the top 2 kids in the state of Iowa this coming season. But you know what? The big thing was I didn't realize he was at the level of challenging the national kids the way he did. And as far as I was concerned, I thought he deserved that top 30 game. He didn't make it. He made the top 60. But he equates himself that he can play with anybody. And you know what? He came over to me afterwards, and the thing he said, and it was really, you should be appreciative of this, Dinos. He said, thank you, because I learned who I am and who I can be. So he's going to take it home and make it a positive. He didn't make this game, but I told him, I said afterwards, I said, well, you remind me a lot of a young Matt Gatens. And Matt Gatens was the 4-year starter at the University of Iowa, and that's the kind of thing that this kid's going to strive to be.
Well, and again, one other thing, we got to give it this guy here. I mean, so many of the basketball, the major grassroots evaluation events, if you will, throughout the country are somehow affiliated with one of the major 3, Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, which is fine. They have great events, great opportunities. They do a great job. But there are 40 to 50% of the actual basketball high school playing population that don't play. And you got Xavier Booker last year, and then Drew Kingery this year. Prime example of a guy because of an event Dinos has in Indianapolis.
With Garwell Duels, also under the team, Style Phipps, Seven Bahati.
Well, and some kids that you invited that couldn't come, like the Mama Shiva kid and kids like that are great players.
Play for the EYBL.
Yeah.
Again, and that's fine. There's only so many roster spots. So guys that don't necessarily, either they don't get discovered or they don't get involved at that. Again, this is the one camp where shoe company affiliation or high school affiliation or club ball official or club team official doesn't matter.
It doesn't exist.
His goal is and how we can help him. Can we get the best players across the country?
Well, and the advantage, and he's been very, very smart about this, it's when you have it. Sometimes scheduling can be as much as anything when it comes to getting great talent. I know we work with the Top 100 camp. We always have to deal with Team USA and what they're doing and those kind of things. And also dealing with all the thought processes of the shoe company folk and that kind of thing about who's going to come, who won't let their guys come, who will. I know you face that too, Dinos. But having it in this bucket right at the beginning of June, it's always been the week after Memorial Day, that's always been the time frame. It seems to work for the camp to eliminate a lot of that. Well, I don't want them to go because I got to play. Well, they don't have to play next week. They're not going to play in another weekend event because July is a month away.
A way to look at it is Memorial Day signals the end of the spring.
Yeah, exactly.
And this camp signals the beginning of the summer. It's kind of the break, kind of a clean break in between there too. But another way of looking at the shoe affiliation thing, the way I've come to view it is I think among Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, they probably have 90% of the talent in the country. And there's about 10% left that are sprinkled among the independents. And 10% may not seem like a big number, Van, but across a $300 million population country, 10% is sizable.
That's right.
There's a sizable number of kids out there that don't play for shoes that are quality players.
Well, the way I look at it is this. We have 396 Division I schools. They all are recruiting 3 to 4 players each. That's 1,000 plus kids. And you look at, if you're talking that you're eliminating the thought process of 100 kids get the opportunity to prove their game. But we're not just talking in one class. We're talking in 2 or 3 classes that are in that recruiting cycle. So that's 300 or 400 kids that are affected if they don't get to events like this and don't come to the events like the Terrific 24 and other things. But to me, this event is the premier event for those players that want that opportunity to compete. They come to your stuff, they get known, they stay on your radar, you make sure they're part of the process and you're not just recruiting the 3 shoe companies, because you've got Frank and I and others that feed that into you. You know who the top kids are. Even if you're running an event at the same time that they're running, you're going to know who's the guys that are blowing up. And I think that's the real important thing, getting the kids here. And because of the scheduling.
One more thing, man. I think another value of this camp and also the NBAPA camp, even though they're not the most ideal of formats from a cohesiveness, chemistry standpoint, they are the best way to consolidate the best possible players as much as possible in the smallest venue where we can get a great look at them, compared to what's happening on the team side, unfortunately, where there's so much dilution of talent, even at the highest levels of Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour. It's become diluted to where you're getting not a great look from a talent standpoint.
Well, the distribution of the talent, it's not only like, okay, there's a Under Armour, Adidas, and Nike, so that's just, no, in reality, in years past, there's pretty much Nike being a prime example. They got 15, 16, 17. So in years past, there's plenty of guys in that 16s level that could play on the 17s and be successful, but they split it up so much so it's kind of spread out a little.
Well, and it's very, very difficult to cover in those situations because you got 48 to 50 teams in each one of the age group divisions, and therefore you don't get the chance to get to see them. You can only see so many teams in a weekend. I think what most people don't realize, if you can do 48 to 50 teams in a weekend and do them well, that's a good weekend for most guys that scout. If you can do 60, 80, or 100, which some of us in the business can do, okay, that's a great weekend for a scout. But still then, it's still a lot of work, it's a lot of movement, and you don't get 100% eyes on as much as you'd like to get. When you come to an individual event, whether it be the Pangos All-America Camp, the NBAPA Players Top 100 Camp, you're getting eyes on at the best players available that weekend anywhere in America that's available. So if you see 70 great players at the NBA Players Top 100 because 30 players are in Colorado Springs, and this weekend you get everybody who's available physically to be here, because most of the kids that you invited that didn't come, most of them was because of injuries or something going on in their family.
Or 18 and up playing a team.
Yeah, the few kids that were playing in the 18 and under.
Going back to Frank's point real quick, another great example, there was 3 kids here from the mean streets, 16 and under team.
Yeah.
Now, if you were looking at him in the Nike thing, all you were seeing is them playing against other 16 and under.
Yeah.
Now you saw him here playing against 17 and under caliber, and you got a better feel for how good they really are right now.
Well, yeah, I thought it was an amazing thing is that some of the national guys had the 2 kids flip-flopped in the way we saw them this weekend. And then some of that's just the way they play and how they play. Both of them are very talented kids. The 2 big kids are tremendous.
From St. Rita,
yeah, I mean, Johnson and
Brown.
Those 2 kids are just amazingly talented for their age group. And I think we saw that at the Frost Soft thing, but you don't know how good are they when they get out into the rest of the world. And they proved they could play with anybody. We had an 8th grader here. And I'll let you name who it is, Dinos, because I don't have all the stuff. But we had an 8th grader, a 6'5" 8th grader that's from Arizona, I think.
No, he was from
Georgia.
Okay, Georgia. That was phenomenal for his age group. And he's going to be a guy
Caleb Holt, after Alabama, Newmarket, Alabama.
Okay, Caleb Holt. I mean, the kid, he held his own.
Well, I mean,
you don't see that everywhere.
Well, you think about it over the course of 20 years, how many 8th graders have you had in this? I'm thinking, Zimmerman, Steven Zimmerman, Ricky Isaacs, Cassius Stanley,
Tyler Dorsey,
Mikey Williams, who kind of started going into his high school career at the Great Pangos Camp in 2019 with Evan Mobley, Scotty Barnes, and Cade Cunningham, and now going into his final season, he kind of starts, closes it out the final, the spring, summer before his senior year. But, go back to another thing. We talked about all the elite high national people who just follow high school basketball. Well, how important is spring and summer, or why do you watch this? We were talking about this in a great kid, great family, a kid who was like the 8th or 9th man as a freshman out of a very good high school team. This past year, probably the 7th man, Harvard Westlake, Robert Hinton. And so people who just watch high school say, he's a good player. And then you see him over the course. I saw him several times with the Why Not 16s. And I remember and he had already planned to have this Pangos All-American Camp in early May in being at Linwood High. I said, hey, Robert Hinton and a great family, and they had been to Pangos. I said, oh yeah. I said, you got to come to this. Again, come.
And he took the challenge on.
And he took the challenge. He took the challenge, and he competed, and he ended up here. And I tell you what, as much as we all, especially we like it, he even exceeded my expectation in terms of how he played.
Well, I think the one thing is, Frank, and because I've been doing the scouting only thing for 45 years, there's different caliber of players in a high school team. You have a coach who has a way of doing it. Maybe he doesn't like to play his younger guys as much in the high school situation. He grooms them. He keeps them on the junior varsity. He brings them up to the varsity, but they might only play a minute or two. A lot of times when you get into the AAU situation, the summer club situation, and we have the independent circuit, we have the 3 shoe company circuits, we have individual events like these, the opportunity to step out and compare yourself against great players in your age group and older on a regular basis allows a scout to see something that he would not see in a high school game. And just to give you an idea that even at the AAU level, it can be that way. We all remember Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
Dwayne Wade was like the 7th or 8th guy on the Illinois Warriors. Had somebody not got hurt, who knows? He might have played at Illinois Chicago or Chicago State, which were the 2 schools that offered him a scholarship prior to him playing in that game at the Slam and Jam.
I actually coached against Dwayne Wade in the finals of the Nike Nationals. Yeah. He was on that Illinois Warrior team with the number 3 pick of the draft from Southern Illinois, the 6'8".
T.J. Cummings.
T.J. Cummings and the
Andre Brown.
High school to the NBA.
Darius Miles.
Yeah. But my recollection of Dwayne Wade, at that point, he was a 6'5" power forward. Yeah. On the score sheet after that game, he had 5 points and 4 rebounds or something like that. I remember him as a power forward.
Well, and he played behind Mick Lodich, who played at Stanford.
Yeah,
and Mick Lodich was a left-handed guy who could stroke it all day long. And because they needed that in their lineup because of the other guys you guys just mentioned, Cummings and Miles, they had to have a guy who could open it up for those guys to attack the basket. So when I go out and I watch, I look at it this way. There's 10 guys on the floor every time I watch a game. I'm watching all 10. I'm not watching a specific player until they catch my eye. I watch how they play within the structure of their game. Because whether anybody realizes it or not, it is a game played as a team, not an individual. And when you break it down, most of the time when we get negative about kids, what is it about? It's about they're going 1-on-4, 1-on-5. They're not playing the game the way we want them to play it. I realize it's tougher in an individual situation like this because, Dinos, I used to run weekend events. I understand it's hard to get real good structure into those games, but you have to preach it from minute one that if you play together, you play like you'd play with your AAU team or your high school team and do the things you do best, down the road it'll pay off for you. And we saw that with some of these kids that played hard, just played hard this week. Look, Farrell Compton was not on anybody's major map going into this weekend. 1 or 2 of us had seen him. I'd seen him. And he'd shown a little bit. This weekend, he did it with guys, again, against the best of the best. He was competitive with them. He's got a lot of things to build into his game as a rising junior. But when he does that, the fact that he was here, he made the team that he made, Dinos is going to have another feather in his hat. Because that's the kind of kid we saw this weekend. We saw 4 or 5 kids like that this weekend. I'm using him because he always sticks out in my mind because he's 6'7" and he's got a 7'4" wingspan, plays like he's 6'10" and dunks everything and blocks everything that gets around him. So it's easy to remember that player, but there's a lot of skill work to be done. But that's the nice thing. Then you can sit down with the kids, sit down with his parents, talk about the things he needs to do, and we can affect somebody like that in this situation. So one of the great things about Pangos, Dinos, is you've given me an open forum to affect some of those players where I can do that. And that I appreciate greatly, because everyone I can turn a corner for is something that I can look back down the road that I get great pleasure from, even if they never say thank you. And I appreciate that.
I think one thing, and obviously...
Most say thank you, by the way.
Yeah, when we talk about the NBA Players Association camp, obviously they're tied into the NBA and people are working. But I think one thing that's become another little carrot for the kids who want to come to this camp, because they know, pretty much every NBA team is going to be represented here watching again. And, let's face it, no matter what they say, every kid thinks they're going to play in the NBA and certainly wants to play in the NBA. So this is their first, for the most part, most of the first opportunity to actually play in front of NBA people. And again, what does it mean in the big picture? Well, obviously when the NBA guys, Xavier Booker, Ian Jackson, something, it's okay. This is what we saw then, and 2-3 years from now, I guarantee you, I was laughing with some of the NBA guys. Well, we're here. I go, you're here because 2 years from now, Xavier Booker, you're going to be thinking, okay, do we pick him one or somebody else? You're going to go back and look at the Baller TV games and look at him and talk about how he's developed, what you thought now. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of one of the little building blocks or little pieces in the foundation that NBA people can use short-term and long-term evaluations.
Hey, Frank, about a week ago, I had a conversation with a Western Conference NBA team front office guy. Mm-hmm. And he admitted to me, he said, hey, what I love about this camp, every pre-draft period that we have, discussion-wise, in-team meetings, etc., there's always Pangos popping up. I saw that kid at Pangos. Or they have a Pangos reference to that kid. And going back to your point, this is one of several great opportunities for them to make an impression on those NBA people.
And getting back to the NBA thing, all my NBA buddies or clients, they say, well, what about this kid? I go, if you don't have a Baller TV subscription, for what it costs, it's the greatest tool, because you literally now, with the archiving system of Baller TV and the fact that all of the Pangos events and pretty much every other event, they could literally go back and search again, Xavier Booker, they're going to go back and see 4 camp games, an all-star game. They're going to look back at all these. You think Bay Fall, 8th grader playing in your Cerritos College junior Olympic. So again, I think what this is, what Baller TV and their partnership with the Pangos events has done is make a whole lot of college coaches and NBA people's jobs a lot easier in terms of the evaluation process.
To me, it's a thing where we have an opportunity here to see. When you talk about the NBA guys, to see guys before they are. And before they are is very important. And we're talking about, they'll remember Xavier Booker, they'll remember Ian Jackson, they'll probably remember Isaiah
Elohim,
Elohim and a few other guys. But you know what they're going to do? There's going to be some other guys that were intriguing. And they're going to, all of a sudden next year, they're going to see that kid's name on another Pangos camp, or they're going to see him at one of the other All-America things, and they're going to go, wait a minute, I think I've seen him. And if they'll go to their notes, they'll see that, hey, I saw him at the Pangos, and I liked him because I wrote something about him. And the next thing you know, now they start a lineage. Then they go do exactly what Frank's talking about. They go out and they find you. Because the NBA is good at one thing, and that's finding guys who can play in the NBA. And the thing that is done here is you get that started for a lot of kids, because there's kids that, okay, you take a look. We talked Bay Fall. You take a kid like Taylor Bowen, James Brown, Dylan Harper, who really kind of blew up this week as far as we weren't sure how good he was, but now we know he is.
Well, one of the at least 3 players that I'm aware of whose fathers were very good. Ron Harper, very good NBA player, and Dylan Harper's case, his older brother has been a very good player for Rutgers. So again, when you see that opportunity to compete, it's again, when you look at even college basketball coaches, you think about this, what it costs to recruit on the college level, what it costs on a higher level to recruit players in terms of sending coaches out and seeing, and then the money invested in scholarships, the money invested in things. It's a large investment when you recruit a player.
Oh, yeah, it is.
But nothing compared to the NBA. When you've got a first-round pick, you're spending so much money to evaluate that player, and there's so much of an investment and so much at risk. You want every bit of information you can before you make that decision, which, again, Pangos All-America Camp and Baller TV provides those NBA people the ability to say, you know what, I want to see every game he played at a Tarkanian Classic or a Pangos All-America
Camp.
Yeah, NBA players. Now just boom, 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 and they'll have somebody, and they'll hand it to the GM. The say, okay, here's all the edit stuff. Here's when he was this age, and then the best thing. I mean, when you think about these NBA people when they were trying to decide between Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, Josh Christopher in the first round, the 2019 draft, and they're literally saying, hell, we could watch these guys play against each other when they're 17, 18. Again, another little element that they could use in the decision.
And that was the case this year coming up between you had
last year
you had Paolo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, and Jalen
in Chandler, Arizona,
and Smith.
Yeah,
all together, all playing, matching up against each other.
Yeah, you know, the way I look at it is, guys, it's such a great opportunity, whether it's here or it's at Top 100, for them to see the kind of player that they're eventually going to be looking at. And you talk about it's an investment, it's millions of dollars invested when they make that decision. So it's something that you can't just look at and go, oh, well, we can go get another one. No, you might not be able to go get another one. And that's the whole thing about it. You might be stuck with what you got for a year or two. And if you win some games before they get there, you don't get to replace with the same kind of player. So when you draft high, you want to make sure you get it right. And if you draft lower, you got to get it right.
Again, this is going to start to sound like an infomercial for Baller TV, but you think back to the course of the years, college recruiters or NBA people try to find video. Can we get a video? Can you send us a video? Can you send us some huddle? Can you, again, pop into the database of Baller TV and punch in a name, and you're literally all the work that was probably hours upon hours or weeks upon weeks and dozens and dozens of phone calls, literally a few keystrokes on a computer.
That's the voice of Frank Burlison, Basketball Writers Hall of Famer, member of the McDonald's All-American Committee, and a man who you can get and see what he says at burlisononbasketball.com. And to my right, the man who put together this weekend's event, the Pangos All-American Camp, is Dinos Trigonis, the executive director, the man who publishes Nothing But Net magazine, and, of course, I'm Van Coleman, and a lot of times they just call me the guru.
Hey, Van, let's talk about the top 30 game for a second.
Or Van the Man, yes.
What was your take and your initial impression of the top 30 game as far as matchups, who you liked, et cetera?
Well, I tell you what, I always start with the obvious. The obvious for me is it starts with Xavier Booker, who was the MVP of the week of the camp, and a guy that, in my mind, is the one person that I can say for sure we're going to see drafted in the first 5 or 6 people in the draft that he's available in. He could be, as Frank said, 1 or 2. I start there, but the thing that really impressed me about it, that's a big with a lot of skills. He's 6'11". He can shoot it from 3. He runs the floor like he's a wing. That is an NBA lottery pick, pushing for number 1. But the thing that got me about the camp is the quality of all the guards. Yeah. The fact that we had 8, at a minimum, 8, probably 10 point guards who are going to play at the high major basketball level. And 2 or 3 of them going to have a shot to be pros.
I look at these point guards, and again, when we were putting the team together, I suddenly realized Dinos read off, okay, here's one team, and you rattled off like 4 point guards. And then, God, we can't put all the best point guards in one team. And then you go to the blue
I remember
team,
that. That was funny.
And you look, oh, shoot, there's another 4 guys. So, again,
and there were other guys on the top 60 game that you could have substituted in and been.
Look, there's some kids in the top 60 game. When you want to be honest, there's some guys that down the road will develop into players they are not today. Take, for example, Chris Lockett. He is probably long-term a point guard at the final level. If he's going to develop to that level, that's probably the position. He needs to develop a little bit more of a jump shot, but as far as handle and pass, he can do those things, and they love that 6'6" guy that can handle the basketball. There are guys like that you look at and you say, man, how good was this camp? Because that guy is in the top 60 game. And it has been that kind of camp. I thought that this was one of the deeper camps that Dinos has had. And believe me, he's heard me on other occasions not be very kind when it comes to that. As far as the top 30 game, I thought that early on it was really well played, and then it got out of hand with the Dunkathon. I'm not a big fan. I'm going to be honest, Dinos. I absolutely abhor Dunkathons because it takes away from what the pro guys were here for, what I'm here for, what Frank is here for. I know Frank probably, I'll let him speak for himself. But the reality is, it happened. Maybe next time we'll all be a little more vehement about not letting it happen. But I think they had fun. So let's take it to the last thing. I know that sitting back there in the back of the room is Patrick, and Patrick had a lot of fun calling the game because it was fun to call that game. But the reality is, evaluating it was not, because it was not emblematic of how good those kids were. And that's the irritation for an old crusty dude like me, is that I know how good they played for 2 days. And I wanted to see that. Now, I didn't see that from the top 60 guys. They competed. That was a competitive game. They come out, because you know why? Because some of them thought they should have been in the top 30 game. And they were going to show me, Frank, everybody else that they belonged there. And I think there's going to be a couple of those guys, as I mentioned, that are going to be remembered by some of those NBA guys in another year. We had a lot of 24 kids who were very talented here. And that's kudos to you, because sometimes it's tough to get a group of kids that's the right kids. I thought you did a really good job of getting it right. I don't know how you feel, Frank, but that's me.
Again and again, you know, it is what it is. When things start rolling, and then people are tired, and they see people walking out of the gym, and the desire to sprint back on defense kind of goes out the window. But I harken back to, you know, as someone who, especially in the West, you want to see the best players as much as you can, and sometimes you see them, you know, EYBL or summer travel ball tournaments. But think about this again, when, you know, even just forget all the national, just strictly the West. We talked about, you got Jackson.
Ian Jackson.
Jackson Shelstead from same high school in Oregon that produced Peyton Richards. He's in there. You got a Jeremy Fears. You got all these guys, and you're thinking, these are high quality. Again, we've got spectacular athletes, flair, but you get a guy like Jeremy Fears and Jackson.
Shelstead.
Excuse me. You could put them, you know, next year, even though you could drop them into a major. You know, you could take Shelstead. He could go to Oregon and play major minutes because he knows how to play.
He definitely knows how to play. He probably will get major minutes.
You look at, you know, you look at this when you're talking about Arizona, a team that's, you know, year in and year out might have one or two prospects in it. Major, you know, the Dalen Terrys, the Sean Elliott's at Arizona. But you look at the Arizona players at this camp, with Cody Williams from Perry and True Washington, the uncle of Ty Washington, from Cody Williams, younger brother of Jalen Williams from Santa Clara, who's going to be a first-round pick. And
Style Phipps, and you throw Style Phipps in
that. But again, you look at these guys, and you said, this is 5'6", you know, Phelps, who played on the junior game, Kevin Patton
as well.
Yeah, I mean, these are elite players in a city or area of Arizona where it's never really mentioned as one of the, you know, no pun intended, hotbeds of high school basketball. And you look at that, and you know, even in the backyard of, you know, even Adam Gordon's camping in a city and in a state that produces great talent like Nevada, you know, Arizona certainly had, at least at this point,
more than equated themselves, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great group. I kind of think that it's one of those weeks where I came in with an open mind, and I'm glad I did, because I found a number of kids that are going to move up in the rankings that we're going to be doing a nothing but net, and that deservedly so. I mean, they earn it. And then, you know, then some kids solidify themselves. True Washington is one that proved he belongs in the rankings the way he's been shot off the rankings.
And a guy who I've seen a lot over the course of Mountain Point and Firestorm Elite, a non-shoot company thing, and you think about how he's evolved from being a good high school player in Arizona and, you know, the Firestorm program, and then a couple of weeks ago had the opportunity to play with the EYBL and played very well for the Why Not team. But again, you talk about what these things do in terms of the perception of the players, not only among people like us, but college coaches. Now people are going to start saying, is Drew Washington the best 2023 two guard in the West? He might be.
Well, I mean, he sure looked like it this week. I mean, that's the kind of thing that makes it fun. Because, see, we get to see a lot of the freshmen and sophomores, Frank, you and I do, before a lot of people get to see them because of Pangos events. And then to come out and see them make another step, or you see another kid step into the same kind of thing and compete at the same level. It really does make it fun. And we found some bigs and some guys that proved it. I will tell you, I've heard a lot about Sam Walters, and I watched him with the AAU team. He was good. But when I saw him in an individual situation where all of a sudden he's challenging the best athletes in this camp, taking them face to face on and not backing down. He's attacking them. And I said, that young man might have a chance to play in the three-letter league down the road.
And the other thing is, he's kind of a scaled-down version of Xavier Booker because he's about 6'8", left-handed, long, could shoot threes, drive it, and a great finisher and dunker. So again, skipping around here, you talk about the road these players travel. And again, a lot of them, the beauty of Dinos' Pangos organization is just not the Pangos All-American Camp, but the thing that kind of sets the table and lays the foundation who we ultimately invites the Pangos All-American is his regional frost soft camps in September and October. Southern California for the West team, and Duncanville or Dallas for the South team, and Chicago for the Midwest team, and the Philly, New Jersey area for you look down here, and Ian Jackson.
A lot of these faces we've seen before. A lot of these faces we've seen before.
And again, I remember, I guess he wouldn't shave. There's a particular father of one of these players who played the top 60 game, and I know Dinos. I tried to tell him, don't worry, Dinos will get to him. He's focused on 23s. KJ Wyndham's dad. He goes, when is Dinos going to pick? Who had played great at Chicago.
And he had a very good game in the top 60
He had a great camp.
He had 18 points, and he had 3 for 8 from the 3, 7.
After watching him hit those left-handed jumpers and the floors, I keep calling him D'Angelo Russell Jr.,
A little like Jalen Brunson, too.
Yeah, good point.
Well, that's the beauty of the whole thing. Most people don't understand that camps like this, and for 20 years, I ran a camp that featured individuals. We ran weekend events. We had as many as 560 kids at a weekend event, running 48 teams on 8 courts. And the fact that you can do that and see the kids over years. Come in the summer, come in the fall and the spring, come back in the summer, and 2 or 3 years down the road, a kid that you were going, I hope he doesn't hurt himself. I hope somebody doesn't run over him. And the next thing you know, he's the guy running over people. And that's the beauty of it, to see their maturity and how they change and they get better and they get better and they get better. And when you talk to them about the working hard, the developing the skills, the doing the things they have to do, and you see the guys then step out and do it, that's the joy of doing what we do when we go out and watch these kids. And this weekend was one of those weekends because there were some kids that, hey, well, let's talk about the ultimate player here, Xavier Booker. Last year, second team.
Yeah.
Not a first teamer. This isn't a kid who was talked about as a lottery pick. He wasn't talked about as a pick. He was a kid who came, played, learned what he had to work on, went home, did the work, did the things he had to do, came back and said, boys, I'm going to solidify it right now. I'm putting my money down. I'm making my bet on me. And he did. And, I heard a lot about him. I watched him play in the spring, and I said, okay, he goes from 75 to 25 to 30, and now he's 1 to 5. And he's done that himself. And it's because he's taken advantage of the opportunities given in places like this. We don't have, probably to Dinos' credit and probably to his pocketbook, he's glad that we don't have as many as we do. But the reality is, you offer something, Dinos, that isn't offered by other people. And I think that's a great thing. And I think that down the road, the game of basketball is going to need some changes because we seem to be getting more athletically gifted, and individual skilled gifted, but basketball unwise. We don't play the game. That's maybe my grump about the All-Star game. Went back and played the way you play when you're on the street and you're just playing with your buddies and you don't care because there's no money on the line. If there was money on the line, you'd play differently. That comes from my days. That's my days in the Y. We used to do that.
Probably these kids didn't realize there was theoretically.
Well, see, there is money on the line. And that's the other thing. We didn't hit it enough this week, and we will in the future. NIL has changed the game, folks. NIL makes it that when you do this, money is on the line, and playing stupid is not to your advantage. Now get that. Playing stupid is not to your advantage. And we got to make that point to these kids that when we bring this much talent together, play smart, play together, play like you would play on a team that you would want to win with, because it's the same thing. Because who you're winning for? You're winning for you. And you look at the history of the sport, when you get to the NBA, the teams that pay the most usually are the teams that win the most. Why is that? Because they can afford it, because there's people in the stands and TV's watching them. And that's the real thing. You might have one player on those bad teams making max. Some teams have 3 guys that are making max, or 4 guys that are making max, because they built the program to get to that. You want to be a max player? Then play like you want to be a max player, which means play smart, play hard, learn the things you got to learn. And that's what I think this kind of an event teaches them, that, you know what, there's somebody out there that might kick my butt. Because those guys that got their butt kicked this weekend that did not play to their level. We all know that. We're not going to talk about them. It's not important as far as individual names, but they know it. And that is important. That's what makes it great. You got any other thoughts, Frank, about what you saw this weekend?
Yeah, again, the depth, 4 or 5 players that to me were just barely names. I had no vision of, I had no real idea what they saw. Again, you look back throughout the classes, 224. I mean, look at this Jasim Felton from Gastonia, North Carolina, class of 2.
Big surprise. Really good player. Really good player.
Again, props to Dinos. I had never, out of curiosity, that would be a good little story. How would a guy like that, who's not a big name and wasn't anybody's list, I mean, how did you hear about a guy like that?
Well, he was recommended. He plays with Bobby B. Mays late.
Yeah.
And Bobby Mays.
James Springer's old program.
Yeah, highly recommended him. And we had an opening for a combo guard with size at the end.
Yeah.
And he was actually a late addition.
Really? When did you actually?
Probably within a week of the camp.
Wow.
Well, you have a lot of good luck with those late additions. Sometimes that makes a difference for the overall camp. It worked with Westbrook. It's worked with others. So
and sometimes whether you're playing or you're selecting, patience is always.
Yeah. And I saw him play with B. Mays, and I would have said, yeah, really good player, but I wouldn't have said the kind of dominant player he was at this camp, the kind of dominant player that he became. So, I look at it and say, great weekend, great camp, great depth, a lot of good kids. I think that, like anything, we hope that all of you enjoyed us talking about it. We talked about it in preview after the first day on episode 1. This is episode number 2. We hope to continue this here on Baller TV in the future. So we hope you are hooked on hoops. We'll see you next time.